Last week, E3 died, PSVR 2 is dying, and The Last of Us was dead on arrival. We're going to be talking about that here on Last Week in Games. What is up, boyos? Welcome to Last Week in Games, where everything is video games. My name is Jake, and today I'm joined by nobody. This is the first episode of Last Week in Games where I'm hosting the show by myself. So this might be a little different, a little weird. I'm already feeling weird because I'm basically talking to no one. If anyone joins me in chat here on twitch.tv/lonercast, that would be a huge help. Yeah, we're here. Nick is currently in the process of getting married, which is a big deal. He's busy doing that. I couldn't find a co-host to fill in for him, which is fine. So I'm here by myself. And right at the top of the show, I just want to address what the future of this show looks like. The show is not going to die. I won't let that happen. I will never let this show die. I love doing it too much. But what is happening is me and Nick we're going through some changes in life. Me and Nick. Nick is getting married, obviously, as I just said. I'm having some workplace changes here pretty soon. And basically what that means is the Monday live show is not going to exist anymore. But do not fret. We are planning on moving the show to a different date. We have yet to completely iron out the details of what that looks like and what that means. But what that really means is we're probably moving to a Sunday instead of Monday. That's basically all that means. We haven't ironed out like what time we're doing it yet. And when that's gonna take effect. But basically, Nick gets married in a couple weeks, and so the show's basically gonna go on hiatus for a couple weeks while we go through these life changes, which I am sure everyone goes through. And like I said, I will not let this show die. Unless I die, this show is not dying. So Last Week in Games forever, right? So look forward to us coming back probably in like a month. We'll be back. So we're just going to take a few weeks off, but we'll be back. But I wanted to do a show today specifically because there was some big news that happened over the past week, and I really wanted to talk about it. So let's just jump into it. I mean, this show is probably going to be shorter than a normal show. I don't have anyone to sort of jump off of. I'm going to basically be talking to myself like a madman here for a little bit. And then after I'm done with that, and this is why everyone should watch this show live over here on twitch.tv/lonercast. After that, we're going to play Jedi Fallen Order, which you can check out live on twitch.tv/lonercast, or you can watch the replays on YouTube in our past streams playlist. But I want to play Fallen Order because some previews of Jedi Survivor just came out recently, and people seem to be really enjoying the previews. People are saying that it feels better. They're saying Cal plays better than he did in the first one. He's a bit weightier because he was very floaty in the first one. And there's a lot of customization. They're saying that it doesn't feel like you're getting nerfed coming from the first game. Says you're kind of building off of the first game, which is great. So yeah, all that stuff just came out recently. I am sure you could go find reviews everywhere online. Unfortunately, we weren't invited to those events because no one knows who we are. But maybe one day we will be invited to those events because I would love to play that. I will say I was never the biggest fan of Jedi Fallen Order, which is why I want to play it again. And why I'm starting it up after we're done with this show is because I want to give it another shot. I want to see if maybe it'll grow on me, because Jedi Survivors, it's kind of connecting with me a little bit. The trailers were good. It looks clean. And I love Star Wars, and the lore seems good in it. We'll see. Maybe Fallen Order will hit with me more. Regardless, I kind of want to pick up Survivor, even if I don't like Fallen Order, just because it seems good. But I'll wait for like full on reviews for that. So that's kind of it for Jedi Survivor. But there was also a preview. I can't remember if this was last week or the week before, but there was a preview it was a 10-minute gameplay thing dropped by Nintendo for Tears of the Kingdom. And the game looks great. It is interesting that when they showed the gameplay, it really does look like more Breath of the Wild. Until they started showing off some of the elements of building and combining things together. So you could basically pick up anything in the world and fuse it with another thing. You could create ships, you could create boats, you could create cars. You can also create different weapons. So you could take a stick and fuse it with a rock, and you've got a new weapon there. And it seems like that's kind of like the big gameplay change from the first one to the second one, which is great. I think that's a great addition. The only thing I was thinking of, they were showing off like how you can fuse these ice things with an arrow, and it creates ice arrows, or you could fuse a bat eye with an arrow and it becomes a homing arrow. What I don't understand is, or maybe you can, they didn't really answer it in the event, but can you fuse multiple of those so you could just have multiple homing arrows, or do you have to craft them individually? Because I imagine that would become very tedious and annoying if you have to craft them individually each time. So I'm hoping you could craft like 30 homing arrows instead of, individually crafting arrows like that. Cause that would that would get very tedious. That was my only real concern. The game looks great though. I love the first game. If Nick was here, he'd be saying, "Ooh, yeah, Breath of the Wild, not very good," which is why we miss Nick being here to be our contrarian. We love a good contrarian over here at Lonercast. I will say, doing this show without Nick, this is truly Lonercast. We are truly alone over here. Anyway, moving right along. Digital Foundry just dropped an hour-long episode talking about The Last of Us Part 1's PC port. And I implore all of you to go watch that if you are interested in that. Basically, what's happening is the PC port of The Last of Us Part 1 is an absolute train wreck disaster. It's not looking great. It just looks buggy. I've seen clips of it online. Digital Foundry does a great job of breaking down, comparing it to different PC builds versus the PS5 version of the game. Basically, if you have a bad, or not even a bad CPU, if you have like a decent CPU, the game just isn't going to run on your PC properly. And it is said that Naughty Dog is looking into it, but what Digital Foundry basically said is this game is basically an alpha that they released as a full game. Like, this game is incomplete, which is just a shame. And it made me wonder, did this happen with Horizon at all? Or like, man, me and Nick have often talked about how PlayStation has perfected the double dip, right? Where they release a game for the PlayStation, then they release a remaster of the game and like a Game of the Year edition, and then 2 years down the line they release it again for PC, and they get even more traction. Like, it's just a genius business model. That business model is not going to work very well if their PC ports are bad, and it also doesn't encourage PC players who don't have a console to go buy a PlayStation, because their only experience is with a really shitty PC port. So why would I want the new Last of Us game if this is my impression of Last of Us? if this is my impression of how Naughty Dog makes games, right? So this is really something that PlayStation needs to iron out and figure out, because that is not good. And yeah, hopefully they'll figure that out soon enough. Next titty here. This is our other tidbit of news here before we get into the big stuff. Jeff Grubb on Twitter. The reason I didn't put this as a big piece of news is because it's kind of an obvious thing. But Jeff Grubb on Twitter talks about a PlayStation showcase coming soon. This is what Jeff Grubb said on Twitter. He said, "E3 is dead, and I killed it. And now I'm going to honor it by holding it up Weekend at Bernie 3 style alongside Jeff Grubb's Summer Games mess." Thank you to all of the Jeff Grubb Summer Game Mess partners for participating, whether you want to or not. Let's fucking go, okay? And this is what he has to say. Before Summer Game Fest, we are getting a PlayStation showcase. So it's not exactly sure when that showcase is happening, but it is happening before Summer Game Fest. And Summer Game Fest starts on June 8th. So June 8th is when we're getting Summer Game Fest. And sometime before that, we are getting a PlayStation showcase, which is very, very early for a PlayStation showcase. But before we get into that, there is more that he talked about here. June 9th and 10th is Key 3 Days of Play. So Jeff Keighley's Days of Play is happening June 9th and 10th. So those are sort of the Keighley mini events things that happen during Game Fest. June 11th is when we get the Xbox Bethesda showcase. And the same day, we also get the Starfield Direct. And then June 12th is when we get the Ubisoft Forward. So that is sort of the breakdown of Summer Game Fest as of now. Eventually we will hear about when EA's event is, and anyone else who's participating. Maybe Square Enix might do a thing. Capcom, certainly probably going to do a thing. Nintendo, certainly going to do a thing. But this is what we have so far. I'd say the most interesting part of this is that the PlayStation Showcase is happening before Summer Game Fest, which is June 8th. And that means we could potentially get a PlayStation Showcase in May, which is super early for a PlayStation Showcase. And I think that actually makes sense for PlayStation for a number of reasons. Reason number one, Spider-Man is set to come out this year, and we haven't heard jack shit about that game besides that it's coming and like a trailer. Okay. And the rumor is that's coming out in September. So if they do a showcase in May and drop that date for Spider-Man, that's a good run up to September for Spider-Man. We also haven't heard anything else that really PlayStation is releasing this year. And I don't think it's crazy. And maybe some people do think it's crazy, but I don't think it's crazy that we get that Last of Us multiplayer game towards the end of this year. I think it's totally possible. And I think we could totally hear about that at the PlayStation Showcase in May. And then the other reason is, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later in the show, the PlayStation VR 2 is really struggling right now. And there's no games really announced for it. So a PlayStation Showcase in May would be huge for PlayStation VR. Maybe some bundles announced there. Maybe a price drop announced there. Anything. Also at the PlayStation Showcase, this has nothing to do with it being in May, but I think we're going to see, the next few years of PlayStation. Like, what is Sony Bend doing? What is Media Molecule doing? What is Bluepoint doing? And then as far as third parties, are we going to get a Metal Gear? What's going on with Call of Duty? And the whole Activision nonsense. Are we going to see Call of Duty on the PlayStation Plus collection? Or not collection, but the PlayStation Plus Extra streaming service, like we have kind of been seeing in some documents lately. So PlayStation Showcase, pretty exciting. I feel like the Xbox Showcase is pretty clear what we're going to see. We might get some surprises, like a new Doom game. I I'm expecting we see a Indiana Jones, I'm expecting to finally see that. Yeah, Xbox Bethesda seems pretty clear. We're going to spend a lot of time on Starfield and maybe some other things here and there. Update on Halo, stuff like that. And that is June 11th, by the way. June 12th, Ubisoft Forward. We're going to see some Ubisoft shit. Are we going to see Skull and Bones? I don't know. Hopefully, maybe one day. Summer Game Fest is also exciting. It would be really cool if we get the announcement of the Last of Us factions at the PlayStation Showcase, and then at the Summer Game Fest, we get a little bit more detail about what's going on with the Last of Us factions. That would be great. So that's sort of what I'm thinking with Summer Game Fest. Pretty exciting time to be a gamer. Am I right, or am I goddamn right? This show is insane doing it without Nick, dude. I feel like I have to constantly talk this whole time, and it's really crazy. But we're having a great time. We're over here having a silly goose time. We're goofing and gaffing around. You know what I mean? All right. Now let's get into the news. This is the big news. Not great news either. But let's get into it. E3 has been canceled. This comes from Rebecca Valentine over at IGN. Almost a year after announcing its return, the Entertainment Software Association announced today to its members that this year's Electronics Entertainment Expo, otherwise known as E3, has been canceled. IGN can confirm. Two sources have confirmed to IGN that the organization announced the cancellation via an email sent out to its members today. The email said that while E3 remains a beloved event and brand, that the 2023 version simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute it in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry. The ESA concludes the email by reiterating its commitment to advocacy work. It does not mention undertaking the show again in the future. Following IGN's report, the ESA issued the following public statement from Kyle Marsden-Kish, Global VP of Gaming for ReedPop. This is what it said. This was a difficult decision because of all the effort we and our partners put toward making this event happen. But we had to do what's right for the industry and what's right for E3. We appreciate and understand that interested companies wouldn't have playable demos ready, and that resourcing challenges made being at E3 this summer an obstacle they couldn't overcome. For those who did commit to E3 2023, we're sorry we can't put on the showcase you deserve and that you've come to expect from ReedPop's event experiences. The press release adds that ReedPop and the ESA will continue to work together on future E3 events. Right. The event was supposed to be held from June 13th through June 16th at the Los Angeles Convention Center and would have been the first in-person E3 event since 2019. The event was canceled in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and while a digital version was held in 2021, the event was canceled again in 2022 in an effort to focus on a revitalized showcase that would set a new standard for hybrid industry events. E3's return for this year was announced last June, alongside the confirmation that E3 2022 had been canceled. The news comes as multiple big names in the industry, from Xbox, Nintendo, PlayStation, and more recently, Ubisoft announced that it would not be attending E3 in any capacity, with most opting to host their own digital showcase. So yeah, that comes from Rebecca Valentine over at IGN. So last week, I remember we were talking, me and Nick, over the internet. The show is so hard without Nick, dude. I need him. He's my muse. You are my muse, Nick. But I remember we were talking about E3 and what does the future of E3 happen? Like what's going on with E3? Nintendo had backed out, Xbox had backed out, PlayStation had backed out years ago. They weren't even at the 2019 event. And right as we were talking about that, it was announced that Ubisoft back out. And that was going to be the big news, right? That was going to be the big news of this week. And then the next day after that, we got the announcement that E3 was canceled. But I remember when Ubisoft announced that they weren't doing the show, I immediately messaged Nick and I was like, at what point do they just cancel this show? Because who's there? You know, you don't have Ubisoft. You don't have the big three. What's there? Digital Foundry? Digital Foundry also announced that they were going to be at the Summer Game Fest and not at E3. So, or not Digital Foundry. I mean, Devolver Digital, excuse me. So even they announced that they weren't going to be at E3. The only ones who really announced they were going to be at E3 was small, like really small companies, you know? So it does suck on their behalf that they're missing out on this. But the ESA must have known, and ReedPop must have known, that this event was going to be so disastrous that it was better to just take the L, because you have to remember, they had probably already signed a document, or signed a document with the convention center, and they probably broke that contract by not holding this event. And they thought, hey, it's better to take that hit and that loss than put on this terrible event. And they probably had contracts with the smaller dev teams that were, or publishers that were going to be on the show floor, and they probably had to pay them all out to not attend this year. And they thought, hey, it's going to be better to do that than to put on this terrible show. I remember last year when they announced that they were doing an E3 in 2023, and this was right after they canceled last year's. They're like, we want to cancel this year because next year's is going to be amazing. And I remember me and Nick talked about it. I'm sure you could go back to a show we did last year. I remember saying they might be able to pull off this show, but after this show, it's done. E3 is over. And they're still, in their statement, they said they want to do another show, but I just don't buy it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think E3 is done. And if they do try to do another show, it's going to be a lot like this year, where it's just a complete disaster and no one will be attending. So I can't imagine that going very well if they do try again next year. The only way I could see it potentially working, because it is owned by ReedPop now. A few months back, ReedPop bought E3. And if you don't know who ReedPop is, ReedPop puts on the PAX events. So the only way I could see E3 happening is if they rebrand it as PAX LA. That happens in the summer. That's the only way I could see it happening. And maybe partnering with Jeff Keighley. So Jeff Keighley does his big summer game fest, and that goes right into PAX LA or whatever. They can't call it PAX West because we already have that up in Portland, or not Portland, Seattle. So I don't know, just call it like PAX LA, or PAX 3, PAX E3 maybe. That's the only way I could see E3 happening. And even pre-pandemic, we were all talking about like how E3 is dying. PlayStation wasn't at the 2019 event. And even pre that, everyone was like, what was the point of this? I think Nintendo really started something when they started doing the Nintendo Treehouse, and Sony and Xbox really took that to heart, and they said, hey, why don't we just do our own events? EA stopped going to E3 before before the pandemic as well. So this was sort of an inevitable thing that was going to happen, that I think was just kind of sped along by the pandemic. And you have to remember before as well, E3 leaked like everyone's information a few years ago. So it already didn't have like a good reputation. So the only thing that E3 really has going for it is the fact that it's like a it's like a nostalgia thing. That's the only thing it really has going for it. But it used to be a really like an industry insider thing, and it kind of lost that, right? Like it started opening up to the public. Industry insiders started hating going to it because the public was there and it was like too much. So yeah, it was just sort of inevitable that this was going to happen. So I'm sad to see E3 go, but it was inevitable. Will we see E3 next year? Probably not. I can't imagine we will see an E3 next year. But, you know, anything's possible. Get excited for Key 3, you know, the Jeff Keighley event. Okay, here's our next piece of news here. PlayStation VR 2 first month sales figures reportedly below 300,000 units. This comes from Oisin Kunke over at VG247. And I'm so sorry if I said your name wrong. But yeah, VG247. A new report suggests the initial PlayStation VR 2 figures aren't looking so good in the first month the hardware has been out. According to a new report from Bloomberg, the PSVR 2 has sold less than 300,000 units, only a month after launching. This comes from research firm IDC, who told Bloomberg it expected the headset to have only sold 270,000 units in its first month, a far cry from the 2 million Sony apparently wanted to produce by March this year. IDC's Vice President of Data and Analytics, Francisco Geronimo, told Bloomberg he suspects a price cut on the PSVR 2 will be necessary to avoid a complete disaster of the new product. Sony announced the price of the PSVR 2 last November, which is retailing for an eye-wateringly high 529 quid. So that would be like I think it's 550 USD. For comparison, that costs more than a PS5 itself, which generally costs £479, which is 500 here at recommended retail price. This has obviously been a slightly contentious point for many, as it's a costly barrier of entry just to play a format of games that have yet to really prove itself to many players. Quote, consumers around the world are facing rising costs of living, rising interest rates, and rising layoffs, said Geronimo. VR headsets are not top of mind for most consumers under the current economic climate, end quote. This isn't to say the PSVR 2 isn't a good headset. Our own Tom Ori believes the accessory to be the best VR experience he's had in terms of hardware, but did note that it, quote, isn't a cheap toy you could take a gamble on, end quote. Another issue is that there aren't any big name games attached to the PSVR 2 outside of Horizon Call of the Mountain, though bonus VR modes for games like Gran Turismo 7 and Resident Evil 4 and Village might entice some. The original PSVR did go on to sell 5 million units, so time will tell to see how its follow-up fares. So this was kind of a predictable outcome to the PSVR 2, but that's actually far worse than I kind of had anticipated it to do. Like I said here, PSVR sold 5 million units lifetime. I don't think this is going to sell more than 2 million lifetime. Like they were saying, cost of living is going up. You know, it costs like $6 to get some fucking eggs around here. Gas is expensive. You know, I think they started developing PSVR 2 in a very different landscape. You know, I think they probably started developing it back in 2018, 2019, which was pre-pandemic. And it's just, we're in a different landscape. I think people will go after the PS5 because it's a known commodity, and like he said in this article, it's not a gamble. You can just go and pick it up, and you know what you're getting. And you're getting tons of games, as well as it being backwards compatible with the PS4. So you've got all of those games there too. PSVR 2, not backwards compatible, costs more than a PlayStation 5, and it doesn't have a lot of big games on it yet. And with these sales numbers, I'm scared it won't ever get those big games. We got Call of the Mountain on there, but third parties aren't going to want to develop for this thing. 270,000 people, and you have to think not everyone who owns a console is going to buy a game, your game specifically, you know? So it's not going to be a 100% attach rate if you're developing a game for a system. So for a system like PS4, you know, you get a 25% attach rate. That's still a lot of people buying your game. You get a 25% attach rate of the PSVR 2. That's not enough to break even on making a game, especially for a game on new technology. You know, it's harder to make. Yeah, I don't know, man. The only thing I could see saving this is if somehow they figure out a way to release a cheaper version. But I just don't think that's going to happen initially because they're going to be taking such a huge loss. The only way I could see them really making it work is if they do bundles, which we could potentially see at the PlayStation Showcase. We get a Call of the Mountain bundle where you can get, you know, a bundle with a PlayStation, a VR, and Call of the Mountain for like, you know, $800. That's just to get more units out there, because then at least you're also selling PS5s. It's the only way I could really see it happening. But PSVR 2 is in a bad state, and it was predictable. They didn't market it. They didn't even do a state of play before they released the thing, which is insane. I think they knew that this thing was dead on arrival. And what can you do? You know, what can you do to what can you do? I think all they could do was let's just release it, and hopefully we can recoup some of that money that we lost. I don't think they did. I think this is doing far worse than they had anticipated. That's really bad. So the other thing that I could see potentially helping the VR2 is if they cook up some sort of deal with Valve, where they could get Half-Life Alyx on this thing. Because I think people would be excited to play Half-Life Alyx. But PSVR 1 was an incredible device because it was a cheap entry point. I can't remember how much it cost on release, but it was pretty cheap. And, you know, the PS4 at the time was pretty cheap as well and easy to find. You could find a PS4 easily. Right now, it's hard to find a PS5. It's becoming more readily available. But also, on top of that, you know, you're buying something more expensive than the PSV or the PlayStation 5. Okay, let's see. PSVR release date cost. Let's see. It launched for $399 back in 2016. Which was a totally different landscape. That's cheaper than what the PlayStation 4 was. It's actually about the same as what the PlayStation 4 was at launch, huh? But by the point it came out in 2016, everyone had a PS4, you know. Yeah, it was just a totally different landscape than right now. And VR was hot at the time. And I don't think VR has that kind of appeal anymore. It's a very niche thing. And yeah, I don't know. I wonder what this says about what PlayStation's going to do in the future as far as like doing side projects. Like the Vita was such a massive failure as well. The VR2, pretty big failure. I don't know. I can't imagine them doing a VR3 after this. I'd love to see them do another handheld, but I just don't think they'll do it. I think they're just going to stick with PlayStation forever, which is unfortunate because it is fun when PlayStation does some weird shit. Like hey, we're doing a VR. Like that was cool when the first one came out, but when the second one came out, I was like, ugh. In fact, there's kind of a trend, right? Like the PSP came out, everyone loved it, and then the Vita came out, and everyone fucking hated it, which is kind of the consensus here. This thing completely undersold, and a very similar thing too, where the Vita came out and it was actually an impressive machine. People who had one were like, "This is great," but no one bought it. And that's kind of the case with this PSVR 2, where everyone's like, this thing's great, but no one has one. So who knows? They could turn it around, but I just don't see it happening. I'd love to see another handheld, though. I would. All right, last piece of news here. Getting close to the end of the show, but we got one more piece of news here, and it is the NPD numbers are in, baby. The NPD numbers, which are changing their name, by the way. IRI and NPD have come together to form Circana. So, yeah, these are their Circana numbers. I'm still going to call them NPD. These are the top 10 selling video games of February 2023. At number 1, we got Hogwarts Legacy. At number 2, we've got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. At number 3, we've got Dead Space. At number 4, we've got Madden NFL 23 EA Sports. We've got, at number 5, FIFA 23 EA Sports. Jumping up from number 11 to number 6 is The Last of Us Part 1, and that is probably because of The Last of Us releasing on HBO. What's up, Luke Skywalker in chat? Thank you for stopping in. We will be playing Fallen Order after I'm done with the show here, which we're coming to a wrap here really quickly. At number 7, maintaining its hold for over a year now. I think the game was released in February of 2022. But at number 7 is Elden Ring. Continues to be a huge game. Thank you for the subscribe, Luke Skywalker. At number 8 is Wild Hearts, which is a new game. At number 9 is Like a Dragon Ishin. And at number 10 is Octopath Traveler 2, which I've been playing, and I think it's a pretty fun game. Cool to see it on this list. Wish it was a little higher, but it makes sense. Kind of a niche game. Yeah. Kind of unfortunate it's down there, though. Great game. Okay. Here are the top 10 selling video games year to date for 2023. At number 1, after only being on the market for 1 month, Hogwarts Legacy, taking that top spot. At number 2 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. At number 3 is Dead Space. At number 4 is Madden NFL 23. At number 5 is FIFA 23. At number 6 is Elden Ring. At number 7 is Fire Emblem Engage. At number 8 is God of War Ragnarok. At number 9, jumping up from number 11, is The Last of Us Part 1. And at number 10 is Forspoken. We will see Forspoken leave that list next month. I am sure of it. Very cool stuff. I'm wondering what next month is going to look like. We've got a lot of games coming out this month. Or we had a lot of games that came out last month, right? In March. I bet The Last of Us sales are going to actually go up next month. Even with the shitty PC port, I still think Last of Us is going to pop up in sales. Yeah. And then this month, in April, a lot of big games coming out as well. We've got Jedi Survivor coming out later this month. Speaking of games coming out, let me pull up the video game release calendar here. I completely forgot to add it to my document, but we're going to pull it up. How's everyone doing in chat? How we doing over here? We are in April. April 3rd to the 10th. Okay. April 4th, we've got Creed, Rise to Glory, Championship Edition, coming to PSVR 2 on April 4th. Grimoire Once More comes to PS5, PS4, and Switch, April 4th. Hogwarts Legacy is finally coming to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, April 4th as well. Meet Your Maker is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on April 4th. Road 96 Mile Zero comes to PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch PC, April 4th. Batora Lost Haven comes to Switch April 6th. Curse of the Sea Rats comes to everything April 6th. Everspace 2 comes to PC April 6th. Paparazzi comes to Switch April 6th. Dude, am I reading the wrong year again? Did I fucking do this again? Please. Please. No, this is correct. This is correct. Okay. I'm sorry. There was one time where I started reading the release dates, and I was reading last year's release date. So I just wanted to make sure, because Paparazzi came out last year, but this must be a fucking port of it or something. Holy shit. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted myself, because Hogwarts Legacy came out. Yeah, anyway. EA Sports PGA Tour comes out April 7th. Sherlock Holmes The Awakened remake comes out April 11th. Tron Identity comes out to Switch and PC April 11th. Okay, yeah, that's it. That's all the games that are coming out this week. Oh, wow. Things are falling apart quickly. God damn, dude. Doing this show by myself is like really tough. This is like the toughest thing I've ever done. But anyway, we're going to end the show there. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for coming by. Again, we're changing the time of the show to Sundays. We're taking a month off because Nick is getting married, and I don't want to have to do all these shows by myself. I will if I need to. But thank you so much for watching. We will catch you next time. Once again, check us out on twitch.tv/lonercast for... We're going to be playing Fallen Order to prepare for Jedi Survivor. So come over to twitch.tv/lonercast. You can watch this show live, and you get all the fun behind the scenes stuff as well. So that's always fun. We post this show on YouTube. We post on Spotify. We post it on pretty much everything. For some reason, Apple Podcasts seems like it's hard to find the show. So yeah, just go to like Spotify or whatever. We're pretty much everywhere though. We're on Stitcher. We're pretty much everywhere. Apple Podcasts is weird though. We're on like Google Play and stuff. So we're on there. We're also on YouTube. So come over on YouTube and watch the show. We post it on Tuesday right now, but I'm sure we're gonna start posting it on Monday when we move the live show to Sunday. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Catch you next time. Catch you in a month, I guess. So bye-bye.